We don't want the World Cup here. Go play somewhere else. We're not short on poverty already. That was the message, in essence, coming out of Chicago, the third largest city in the United States, addressed to the committee responsible for the joint United States Canada Mexico bid for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. And it wasn't just a comment, it was a decision. Chicago officially announced it did not want to be one of the host cities for the World Cup 2026. But why would a global city like Chicago reject hosting the biggest football tournament on earth? Let's go back to 2017. At that time, Chicago was one of 41 cities across the United States, Canada, and Mexico that had expressed interest in hosting matches for the 2026 World Cup. The idea was to be included in the final bid that the three countries would present to FIFA on the 16th of March 2018. Everything was going according to plan until something unexpected happened. Just hours before the final North American bid was supposed to be submitted to FIFA, on the 14th of March 2018, Chicago's mayor at the time, Rahm Emanuel, made a shocking announcement. Chicago was withdrawing from the bid, just like that, one of the most important American cities in the project out. And the reason, according to Emanuel, came 2 days later in clarification. FIFA was essentially asking cities to cover most of the costs while it kept the revenues. He described it in very simple terms. FIFA wanted cities to write a blank check, and Chicago did exactly what any financial authority would do. It ran the numbers. Once the city calculated costs versus expected benefits, the result was clear. Hosting the World Cup would not generate profit. It would likely result in losses. And those losses would come directly from taxpayers. For Chicago, that was unacceptable. So it withdrew completely. The bid continued without Chicago, and in June 2018, the United States Canada Mexico proposal won the right to host the 2026 FIFA World Cup, a tournament that will now be played across 16 cities in North America, including 11 cities inside the United States. But there's one major absence, Chicago. And interestingly, Chicago today is not regretting that decision. In fact, many analysts now argue it was one of the most rational decisions any host city made, because what followed over the years was a growing conflict between FIFA and host cities across the United States. A conflict over one thing: money. FIFA's structure for the 2026 World Cup is fundamentally different from previous tournaments. For the first time in history, FIFA centralized almost all commercial control. There is no strong local organizing committee like in past World Cups. Instead, FIFA controls operations, sponsorships, broadcasting, and licensing almost entirely. And that's where the controversy begins. FIFA is projected to generate around $11 billion in total revenue from the 2026 World Cup. Let's break down where that money comes from. Broadcasting rights, about $4.264 billion. Ticket sales and hospitality, about $3.097 billion. Sponsorship and advertising, about $2.88 billion. Licensing, about $66 million. Other revenues, about $633 million. Total, roughly $10.9 to $11 billion. Now, here's the controversial part. Almost all of this money goes to FIFA, not the host cities, not the local governments. In broadcasting revenue, cities get nothing. In sponsorship deals, almost nothing. In ticket sales, also essentially nothing, because FIFA has taken full control of global commercial rights. In previous World Cups like Qatar 2022, there was at least a local organizing committee that participated in sponsorship deals and generated local revenue. But in 2026, that system has been removed. Now, FIFA runs everything directly, and it has divided sponsorship into three major tiers. Number one, FIFA partners the top tier. Companies like Adidas, Coca-Cola, Hyundai, Kia, Visa, Qatar Airways, Aramco, Lenovo. Number two, World Cup sponsors. Companies like McDonald's, Bank of America, Hisense, AB InBev, Unilever, and others. And three, tournament supporters. Companies like Airbnb, DoorDash, Home Depot, Diageo, Valvoline. All of these companies pay FIFA directly, not the cities, not the local authorities. And FIFA keeps almost all of it. But to soften criticism, FIFA introduced something called the Host City Supporter Program. On paper, it sounds like help for cities. In reality, many describe it as symbolic, almost like a charity box for host cities. The idea is that cities can sign local sponsorships, but under strict conditions. First, the sponsor must be local. Second, it cannot compete with any FIFA global sponsor. And here is where the system breaks down because FIFA's global sponsors operate in almost every major industry. So, cities quickly discovered that almost every serious sponsor was already taken. For example, Philadelphia attempted to sign a deal with the local grocery chain Wawa worth around $5 million, but the deal was rejected. Why? Because it was considered a conflict with McDonald's, a FIFA sponsor, since both operate in the food sector. So, cities are left with very limited options. Small businesses, local mechanics, laundromats, low value contracts. Um, and those deals cannot cover the massive costs of hosting matches. Now let's talk about costs. Because while FIFA keeps the revenue, the cities keep the expenses. Security, transport, infrastructure, upgrades, logistics, all of it falls on local governments. Even fan zones, the public viewing areas where fans gather to watch matches, are technically free revenue for cities. But in reality, they are expensive, very expensive. Security alone can exceed $1 million per day for a large fan festival. Multiply that across the entire tournament, and the cost becomes enormous. Yet, FIFA requires tickets to fan festivals to be free. So, cities ask, where does the money come from? They cannot rely on ticket sales. They cannot rely on major sponsorships. And they cannot rely on taxation of FIFA revenue. Because here is another key point. FIFA is exempt from local taxation agreements. Cities cannot tax ticket sales, sponsorship income, or broadcasting revenue. Everything flows to FIFA without deductions. So, again, what do cities actually gain? The official answer is tourism. FIFA argues the World Cup brings millions of visitors who will spend money in hotels, restaurants, transport, and retail, boosting local economies and tax revenue. But in reality, the data is far more complicated. According to surveys from the American Hotel Association in May, covering more than 200 hotels in host cities, around 80% of hotels reported bookings lower than expected. In Kansas City, up to 90% of hotels reported weaker than normal demand. In cities like Boston, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Seattle, many hotels described the World Cup as a non event. Some cities even found themselves with unusually high vacancy rates instead of a tourism boom. And that is deeply ironic because the expectation was overcrowding. Instead, many cities are seeing the opposite. Why? There are several reasons. First, international fans are not coming in large numbers. Visa issues, travel costs, and extremely high ticket prices are discouraging global attendance. Second, domestic fans cannot fully replace them. A survey published in May found that only 13% of Americans are highly interested in the World Cup, while 54% say they are not interested at all. So the idea that American fans will fill the gap is questionable. And even if they do, there is another problem. Economically, local fans do not create new spending, they only shift it. Economists call this the displacement effect. For example, a resident of New York normally spends $1,000 a month on entertainment, restaurants, movies, leisure. During the World Cup, that same person still spends $1,000, but now they spend it on matches, fan zones, and related activities. So total spending does not increase, it just moves. And from a city revenue perspective, that changes nothing. Worse, if spending shifts toward FIFA controlled activities, that money often flows out of the country entirely to FIFA headquarters in Switzerland, which is largely tax exempt. So instead of boosting local economies, the World Cup may simply redistribute money, not create new wealth. And this is why some economists estimate that host cities could collectively face a deficit approaching $250 million once security and infrastructure costs are included. One economist, specializing in mega events, explained it clearly. Cities are taking on the costs while FIFA keeps the profits. And that brings us to another flashpoint: New Jersey. The governor of New Jersey, which will host matches at MetLife Stadium, openly criticized FIFA in April 2026. She stated that the state transit system would have to spend around $48 million transporting fans safely to and from the stadium entirely from public funds. At the same time, FIFA was expected to earn billions. Her message was direct: taxpayers are paying, FIFA is profiting. And soon after, transport authorities announced something controversial. A normal $12.9 round trip ticket between New York Penn Station and the stadium in New Jersey would rise to around $150 during the tournament, more than 11 times the normal price. Officials defended it as necessary to cover operational costs, but critics saw it as another sign that the financial burden is being pushed onto the public. Meanwhile, FIFA and partner organizations released a study estimating the World Cup could generate $30.5 billion in economic impact for the United States. But many economists strongly question this number because when journalists tried to verify the study, they were passed between FIFA, the World Trade Organization, and private consulting firms with no clear accountability. Even the consulting company behind the study did not respond to requests for clarification, which raised even more doubts about whether the numbers were realistic or just promotional. And this is where public frustration is growing because cities feel they were promised economic prosperity but are being delivered financial risk. Some officials have even described the situation as one of the worst financial deals in modern sports history. Which brings us back to Chicago. Was Chicago right all along? Because today, many cities facing these costs are quietly asking the same question. And maybe the most important lesson is this: not every global event is automatically a good deal. Sometimes saying no is the smartest economic decision of all. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think the 2026 World Cup will actually benefit host cities, or will it end up being a financial trap disguised as celebration? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more deep dives into the hidden economics behind global events. And I'll see you in the next one.